Okay, so Tokenized Impact Bonds is a blockchain for good project. We're trying to disrupt a lot of the inefficiencies that are there in the social services sector today. So, one of the main problems, a few of the main problems that we've identified with social services today is that the systems are typically highly centralized. Large philanthropic contributions usually come from large donors and primarily through institutions. This, in some cases, can lead to donors exercising undue influence on the organizations that provide these social services. The other challenge that we face is a lack of accountability. There is a lack for scalable tracking for the use of donation funds and the outcomes that arise from this. Once a grant is approved for an organization, the organization does not have much incentive to track the outcomes over extended periods of times. Collecting this data also gives us a macro timescale picture of how effectively resources can be utilized. The other issue is that in social services financing is that it comes with a lot of a very high risk endeavor, and it usually comes with a lot of risk to the donors as a lot of counterparty risk to the donors, which includes misuse of fund, frauds, and ineffective use of resources. So, to revolutionize the social services space, uh, public and private sector initiatives had started impact bonds as a pay for as an outcome based contracts that use private funding from investors to cover the upfront capital required and provide and deliver the social services. So there are typically two types of impact bonds in the market, two common types of impact bonds in the market today, which is the social impact bond, which is a pay for success contract, which primarily focuses on social outcomes and passes on savings from the bond guarantor to the investors of the interventions. Similarly, we also have development impact bonds that are analogous to SIBs, and they utilize a performance based instrument intended to finance development programs in low resource countries. How social impact bonds work is typically a commissioner brokers a contract to buy out risk investors who invest in an intervention through service providers. Once the service provider delivers the services to the target population, an independent evaluator evaluates whether these interventions have been effective and the social services was effectively delivered. Upon evaluating the effectiveness of the interventions, the outcome funders buy out the risk capital, the risk principal, and a return to the risk investors for their contribution to the interventions and services. So currently, the challenges with these sort of structures is that they typically have a high cost barrier. Only bond guarantors with deep pockets are able to broker impact bonds and finance the outcomes that arise from social service providers and their interventions. They also require complex structures, and they come with a lot of overheads and are this it at large discourages donors and service providers to take this approach. It also incurs high monitoring costs, and traditional SIPs typically spend up to 15% of the bond value on monitoring and evaluation costs alone. The holdings of risk investors are typically illiquid and are not tradable on an open market, which can lead to locking up capital for long periods of time, which reduces incentives further for bond guarantors and risk investors. Impact bonds are also extremely time consuming and are not suitable for time bound interventions such as disaster relief impact bonds or uh, climate impact bonds, climate disaster impact bonds, which typically require a narrower timeline. So we've tried to disrupt this model using our token economics. What we've tried to do is provide NFTs and fungible impact tokens and governance tokens to create a model that further incentivizes people to use more distributed pools for funding and to track the outcomes of the interventions. So the journey starts with the loot box. Excuse me, sorry. The journey starts with the loot box. A loot box NFT is created to create a distributed pool of intervention funders. It is analogous to a treasure chest of NFTs for interventions made by social enterprises and the outcomes derived from it. Organizations issue the loot boxes to raise funds for their social services. They afterwards drop tokenized intervention and tokenized outcome reports as rewards for funds to the donors, as rewards for the funds raised by the donors. Donors purchase loot boxes to fund organizations and causes to get rewarded the NFTs. The tokenized intervention reports are typically dropped when a social intervention has started from the funding raised through issuing loot boxes. Once this intervention report converts to an outcome, a tokenized outcome report is dropped to the outcome funders. At this point, an outcome funder buys out the risk capital plus a predetermined premium. These NFTs can later be deposited in the treasury to redeem governance tokens. When an outcome funder buys out an intervention from uh, funded by a risk investor, they are rewarded a utility token known as the impact back token. It is a measure of the impact as it is minted in a 1:1 ratio of the dollar value of the intervention, and shows them how impact can be meaningfully measured on the blockchain. The governance tokens is the main fuel of the ecosystem as it uh, maintains the governance model and ensures that bad actors are not able to misuse the ecosystem of the DAO. DAO token holders can create boundaries to resolve social issues with the help of other stakeholders on the ecosystem. The governance tokens are also used to mint loot boxes, and a percentage of the total donations are paid as a fee in the governance token. The governance token can also be used for reputation management by enabling token holders to use weighted quadratic voting to audit and verify outcomes. As the TO as the tokenized outcome reports are deposited in the treasury to redeem governance tokens, the governance token eventually lands up becoming a reserve currency that is backed by NFTs of impactful social services. How we disrupt the current impact model is basically we create loot boxes for risk investors to buy, creating a more distributed pool of risk investors. Outcome funders who choose to directly buy out the outcomes can deposit their funds in an outcome pool, uh, which creates a more distributed pool of outcome funders as well. The outcome funders are given an IBT, an impact back token, as an incentive for being outcome funders, while loot box holders get TIRs and TORs. Once the fundraise is done, the service uh, the smart contracts release the funds to the service providers, and the service providers issue tokenized intervention reports or NFTs for each and every intervention that they deliver to a target population. Using data-driven external validation, we can lower the costs of interventions in some cases and even create incentive structures to leverage communities, volunteers, and beneficiaries to act as evaluators when feasible. When the intervention results in an outcome, the risk capital is bought out and the investor is paid the capital with a return, and the cycle continues further. So, the current problems that we are solving with tokenized impact bonds is that we're reducing donor influence by using a distributed pool of donors. This prevents large donors from exercising undue influence, and it also spreads the risk for donors and allows them to invest in a basket of social services. It also helps us reduce this using a DAO also helps us reduce monitoring costs by leveraging the community driven initiatives and relying on external data driven validation. Programming the right incentives can allow the DAO ecosystem to audit social services through community and external validation methods as well. Uh, by creating a tokenized version of impactful interventions, we can create a liquid market uh, for the impact investors. This is likely to attract more capital as it makes the asset class more liquid and reduces the lock-in period for investors when it is unfeasible for them. It also reduces reliance on trust as we can apply effective reputation management and automate a lot of the functionality using smart contracts when feasible, thus reducing the reliance on trust even further. The value chain that we create is building a robust community of altruists, bringing a large pool of donors to the DAO's ecosystem, provides the DAO members a means to establish their legitimacy and role in shaping the direction of society. It creates a consolidated database of effective and proven interventions and the outcomes that result from it. This gives service providers and donors a macro and micro perspective on how effectively one can utilize limited resources. Leveraging the privacy enhanced and censorship resistant nature of permissionless blockchains allows for organizations to have unchallenged control over their operations and funding and gives them the necessary autonomy to exercise their interventions. This also creates a Web3 native ESG ecosystem, providing an efficient way for donors to allocate resources with the most pragmatic approach to create impact, can create a Web3 native ecosystem for dApps and other Web3 projects to expand their ESG and CSR initiatives natively. We also create a digital asset from philanthropy, from social services. By tracking and recording social interventions and the effectiveness of their outcome, an asset backed by philanthropy is created and can be merged with other assets to create hybrid instruments, from in-game items to art to other forms of smart contracts powered by digital assets. So our roadmap for the foreseeable future is as follows. Sorry, we look to start with our Web2 website first and create a whitelist and grow our community to start our loot box auctions. We will be creating our we'll be initially starting with the testnet to ensure that we can audit the security and safety of the contracts. And within the next 9 to 12 months, we plan to deploy ourselves on the mainnet. Um, the the one sec. Yeah. The allocation of tokens is as follows: 39% of the tokens are reserved in the treasury for impact NFT holders or TOR holders to deposit their NFTs in exchange for voting rights in the DAO. 30% is locked and vested with the team for over 5 years, and 21% is distributed amongst the investors and community, and 10% is given as an incentive to service providers to join our DAO and do their fundraisers through our loot box and NFT ecosystem. The fund utilizations would be through 63% would be spent on marketing to grow the community and build an ecosystem around our project. 21% will be spent in development, 10 on legal, and 6 on operations. This is an overview of our entire token economic model and our ecosystem. To start the process, we go to the top left corner of the flow chart. Uh, Loot box holders can buy loot boxes. Loot box purchasers can buy loot boxes through any of the three options. One way is to do it through DeFi Corpus funding pool. Essentially, it mirrors the corpus funding model in traditional philanthropy, where funders can deposit funds into a pool and float the money. The cumulative returns from floating the capital is used to purchase the loot box in a particular cause area or for a particular organization or the most effective and underrepresented social causes. Uh, the other way that donors can participate in the auction is to buy it using a Harburger taxed loot box. In this, the owner will be able to self-assess the value of the asset and pay a tax rate. This has anti-speculative properties and allows us to allocate our assets to more productive users. The third way is mutating third-party NFTs. We will be providing mutation files that third-party NFT mentors can integrate into their NFT and use it as a means to voluntarily share revenue through capital gains or transaction tax. Once the funds are raised for organizations, causes, and other streams, the loot box, the organizations drop their intervention reports through a provably fair algorithm to the loot box holders. These TIR holders, tokenized intervention report holders, can then form guilds to further their goals in philanthropy and choose the way forward in terms of helping bring social interventions to the ecosystem at large. Once the once the evaluation protocols are able to confirm that an outcome has been achieved, a TIR converts to a TOR once an outcome is confirmed. The outcome funder is given an impact back token as a incentive, which can be used to mint NFTs, mint land in the metaverse, and leverage the database services of the DAO along with other services as well. The TOR holder can deposit their NFTs into the treasury to get governance tokens, which allows them to which allows them to govern the entire DAO's ecosystem and start the cycle